Hey everybody, welcome back to another of our Escape Pod episodes where Mark and Dean Kaluzdian are going to be talking two more horror movies. This week they're going to be talking about the made-for-TV movie, Kolchak, The Night Stalker, and Don't Be Afraid of the Dark.
This is your 2-minute warning. This ship will self-destruct in exactly 2 minutes.
Launch all escape pods as soon as they are filled!
Hey, you're not permitted in there. It's restricted. You'll be deactivated shortly.
Hey, I assume you tried to gain control of the escape pod in Dock 14.
Yes, I tried to gain control. There's an escape pod in Dock 14?
Hey, that's my escape pod. Who are you?
I'm the bearded lady. But are you one of the freaks?
According to this, there's a single occupant escape pod called the Deus Ex Machina.
Escape pod was jettisoned during the fighting. No life forms were aboard.
She must have hidden the plans in the escape pod.
Hey, look! There's a prize inside that box of ham-dingers. An escape pod.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Hello, everyone. This is Mark, and joining me is
Dean.
Dean, how are you?
Good. How are you
doing? How was your Thanksgiving, man?
It was very good. Very
Awesome.
good. Lots of food.
Yes, always.
How about yours?
Good food, family. It was an Italian Thanksgiving, so very loud. But everybody had a good time. Everybody had fun this year. So not like an Italian Thanksgiving, actually, but with a bunch of Italians. Figure that out. Well, good. Glad it's good. So now December is upon us. And
so, of course, we're talking about Christmas movies.
Yes, absolutely. Not tonight, but we will. We got to get to some of those on our next episode. We've been holding on to these for a while now. So we finally got a chance to talk about these two. We're still on the made-for-TV kick, I guess. It's just it seems to be a genre that both of us really love. So tonight we been holding on for this for a while now. It's been tough to get together so far because we are both very busy artists. We got a lot going on.
Yeah, admittedly, these two movies that we're going to watch tonight, we actually we watched a month ago and had to go back and rewatch.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how long it was, but that's how dedicated we are.
Exactly.
We'll rewatch 1970s made-for-TV movies again.
Over and over again.
Yeah, for the show, not because we're crazy.
So for tonight's movies, we've got two great movies that you couldn't see in the movie theater. Back in the time when you could just watch your movies at home. Well, I guess that's exactly like now. But back then, you didn't have as many choices. And on at least one of our choices, Kolchak, it actually brought in huge numbers. I can't quote the numbers to you, but when on the commentary track, they actually gave like the amount of people that watched it in its time. And those were like movie level numbers.
No, it was a huge hit, really ahead of its time. But I mean, we'll get into all that. But it was really a phenomenon. Thank you.
It's true. So TV movies of the 70s and 80s too, especially early 80s, were fantastic.
Yes,
you had
lot of
some
fun.
Great ones. Have you ever seen Gargoyles?
Yes, I have.
Gargoyles.
I saw it. Actually, you know what? Before Rhode Island decided to get rid of MeTV or whoever was responsible, I was a rabid Svengoolie fan, and he would show it a lot. So I've seen it probably a couple of times over the past couple of years because of Svengoolie, and it's a fun movie.
So we have some other ones. We've got Dark Night of the Scarecrow, I believe was a made-for-TV movie.
I always mention Salem's Lot.
Salem's Lot. TV miniseries, but we can still put that in slightly later. I do.
Right.
I'm not correcting you. I'm just adding in that we can also include like a whole other genre
factual
of TV. TV miniseries.
They did, but in my defense, they did condense it into movie
this is
form.
true.
So
it
does become a movie.
Which I actually have the movie poster.
See, there you go.
In my living room.
Proving my point.
Italian version.
The Italian
yeah.
Oh, that's good. I got to see that in Italian.
So then we've also got Duel, which was Steven Spielberg's first directing thing, which also came from the same ABC movie series that our two top movies for tonight come from.
And also was written by Richard Matheson, who wrote this movie, Kolchak, The Night Stalker.
It's true.
It's all connected. Who is a writer I like very much so.
Yeah, one of my favorites too. And we'll actually get into Richard Matheson's vampire vampire ouvre.
Yeah, that has yet to be done right, in my opinion.
It's true.
And what's the other movie we got? So we got Kolchak, the Night Stalker, and
we've got but Mark and I did this.
Yeah,
we both said, all right, instead of just pulling out two obscure movies that we haven't seen and we want to see, let's pick out two of our favorites. Mm-hmm. So Mark picked Kolchak, which is also one of my favorites.
Yep.
And I picked one of my all-time favorite movies of all time, and that is the Don't Be Afraid of the Dark movie.
Right, and not the 2010 one.
Yes,
the original 1973.
1973.
Which I had not seen in years. Years.
So
but I vaguely remembered it.
So do you want to jump right into it?
Yeah, let's go right into it. Let's do it.
So, all right. So let's talk about Young Dean. Young Dean loved Creature Double Feature on Channel 56, as pretty much anyone my age had their Saturday early afternoons. Dale Dorman doing the introduction, and you got to watch two horror movies. Introduced me to a lot of Godzilla movies, and my deep love for Christopher Lee Hammer films. All Creature Double Feature. But there was one afternoon I was watching over at my neighbor's house, and I saw this movie, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, and since then I have been afraid of the dark
because of
this movie. I this movie, although a TV movie and has its TV movie feel to it, but I don't think a movie traumatized me as much as this one did. And it's hard to look at it and say that it would scare a kid that much.
Actually, no, I'm not surprised. I was watching this one late at night, and I was catching things moving in the corner of my eye. I mean, it's got a very hypnotic quality to it. It's the cinematography alone, the way it's just constantly in shadow, and it's the creepiness never stops in that film.
No, it is relentless in its kind of overall just isolating feeling of Kim Darby. Kim Darby. We'll talk about the cast. Kim Darby, who is the mom from Better Off Dead.
Right, and is also in, I know her best in these two movies, don't laugh, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers.
Okay.
She unfortunately meets her demise in that one. And she's also a teacher / werewolf that you don't find out until the very end in Teen Wolf 2 with Jason Bateman. She's the science teacher who expresses, a lot of concern and pays a lot of attention to Todd, and you're not sure why. And it's because she's, in fact, a werewolf. Spoiler. But if any of you are, planning on watching Teen Wolf 2, I doubt many of you are out there.
I have to admit, I haven't seen that since it first came out on video cassette. I did not see that in the theater.
Do yourself a favor and see it, because
it's a Kim Darby masterpiece.
Yes, it's Kim Darby at her finest.
And Jason Bateman is only gotten better.
Gomez, John Ashton's the bad guy in that one. Or Ashton? It is Ashton? Ashton. Sorry, who's Ashton? Not somebody
Ashton
else.
Kutcher.
No.
We'll just spend the entire show debating how to pronounce people's names.
Ferrell.
So Kim Darby, Jim Hutton. I actually don't have Jim Hutton's credits in front of me. So Kim Darby plays Sally Farnham, and her husband Alex is played by Jim Hutton. And Jim Hutton plays the perfect dickish husband.
He is.
He is a total jerk.
He has a punchable face. I'm not sure, but I think he played a dickhead kind of alien kid in the original Star Trek series, one of the very first episodes. And
is that him?
I think so. He's got the mind powers. He's got a really odd forehead. I don't know. I swear it looks like him. Yeah, is it Charlie X? Brian, our producer, by the way, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, it can't be.
Brian, am I thinking of the right one? It might be. Maybe. Or it could just look like him.
I think he definitely looks like him, but
that's who he reminded me of, anyhow.
I think he would actually be too old to be him.
Yeah, maybe. You're right. Yeah. People did a lot of drugs back then, though. And
they aged so much.
Yeah, totally.
This would be 6 years after that.
Yeah, maybe. I could be wrong.
So
it has happened. Anyway.
Well, all right. So back to the thing. Okay. So we also have William Demarest, who is Uncle Charlie from My Three Sons.
Oh, see, I never watched that.
Oh, it's for.
I mean, I know what it is, but
for a kid growing up in the 70s.
Fred McMurray, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And he was kind of like the crotchety uncle who always had that thing to say. Like, he was kind of the sweet comic relief on it. And he also did a lot of kind of screwball comedies like early in his career and even before that, vaudeville.
Right.
This is directed by John Newland, who was the host of One Step Beyond, which was a kind of Twilight Zone-ish type anthology TV show. And he also wrote and directed several of those, or most of those. All right, so the plot of this is you have Sally Farnham, her husband. They inherit a mansion from her grandmother.
Right.
Her grandmother passes away, and she gets the mansion.
Always a good start.
Now, yeah, and you are kind of hinted at that the grandfather had passed away a little while ago, and you get a little hints that it was under mysterious circumstances.
The details are sketchy.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
It leaves a lot to the imagination, and it does. The movie even opens with a creepy voiceover. Like, it actually opens with several voiceovers because you start one with a hissing cat with the title card over a hissing cat, which you never see any cat at any point in the movie again outside of the opening title segment.
No, they were just like, we have a scary cat. Damn it, we're going to use it.
Oh, yeah, it is pretty much like ABC Movie of the Week.
Yeah.
Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, like, all right, any scary movie needs to start with a hissing cat. Then you get these voices just creepy, like, they'll come, they'll set us free.
There's a whole meeting of these things going on. It's like a conference.
And then we get shots of the house, and we get another voiceover of Kim Darby and her husband talking about, like, the great things they can do at the house. And it's almost like we didn't set up the story enough, so we've got to record a little more and put a voiceover in.
Yep. And throw a little exposition in there.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's when we get to them in the house, and we meet the house handy guy, a man that's been brought in, that's William Demarest, and his name is Mr. Harris. She wants him to open up a chimney in the basement, some type of fireplace. And he's like, no, not going to do that. And like, you open up this chimney and bad things are going to come out of it.
These people have all but just a sign saying this place is haunted, get out. Like all the clues are there. Granted it was the 70s, but I know Poltergeist didn't come out yet, but for the love of God, even if you're not a horror movie fan,
if you have a house that has an old handyman that comes with it, your house is haunted
right away.
There's never been a house that had an old handyman that came with it. And same thing, but they also have a maid that kind of comes with them.
Yeah,
like if you have those things, your house is haunted.
Right. If there were servants,
or in this case, has type of demonic creatures that live in the chimney. All right, so
very quick story. Just very quick off, but this is, this kind of relates to what I'm talking about. When Sarah and I were looking for a house, our realtor showed us a very old house in Attleboro, which was not only small and a hobbit couldn't move around in there, but when we went down to the basement, there was a hole in the wall that led into the ground. And no one could explain what it was. So right then and there, I was like, hell no, we're not getting this house. No, we'll be dead inside the first night. So, there are warning signs when you're in a haunted house movie. I think that's why this genre drives me nuts, because all the signs are always there in the beginning, and people just continue to conveniently ignore them.
Yeah,
it drives me nuts.
It's as if people didn't believe that there are monsters living in their basement.
Right, yeah.
So Uncle Charlie doesn't want her to open up the basement. And so she doesn't listen to him. And there is a side door on the chimney. I should have mentioned, the chimney's like completely bricked up. And there's a little side door that's just bolted. And she manages to unbolt the little panel on the side, which if you've seen like old chimneys, my chimney down in the cellar had that too. And the first thing when I moved in was like, oh, I am not opening that.
No. Mysterious doors that don't open should remain shut. It's just that simple.
So she opens it, and we get a point of view shot of this like cavernous opening to this chimney that like there is no way unless there's like this giant world that lives underneath, which kind of works in itself. I almost don't want to make fun of it because it actually, its impossibleness really works.
That's what makes it fun.
And so she opens it and goes about her business. As she's going, you hear those creepy voices again whispering, "She set us free. She set us free." And then we get into a little bit more of her husband, who works for a law firm.
He's a businessman.
Yeah, it is.
He's got a firm.
He's got a firm, and they have clients.
Right.
And so I made a note.
He's in the mob.
Yeah, that they're. What is? Oh, yes. They have to make a good impression for Henderson. Like it is the most like. I picture that anybody who like works in some type of office like that always has to make a good impression for Henderson.
It's always a Henderson or a Paulson. Any kind of son. And he just looks like, I can picture him. He's stepping out of the Dick Van Dyke Show. He's got glasses. He's got a bow tie. I see him. I see him.
Farnham, your wife let the monsters out. So they're having a dinner party where they have all, the business associates coming and meeting, and he has to make that good impression for Henderson. And then after he makes the good impression for Henderson, the next morning he's going to have to go away to handle this big client.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of like, I don't know if, and I don't know if the husband's horrible sexism is a product of the time or a like comment, like that this actually comments on how awful he is. I think it's the latter, like, because I think he's kind of dickish to her. And she talks about that they have marital problems.
Yeah.
To her best friend who takes her out to help get stuff for this party. And the friend comments on like, "Oh no, I let my husband, I don't do any of this equal rights stuff. I just let my husband pay for everything." And what's funny is she's the most, the friend is probably the most proactive character, even though she doesn't believe her friend.
Yeah.
As we get to the end, she's the one who actually makes some effort to help her friend.
Yeah, she's the only one that gives a damn.
Right. So we get back to the house, and something tugs at her dress as she's coming down the stairs, and she hears one of them saying, "We want you." Like just a voice. She just feels something, and we see like the little hand, and we get introduced to these creatures, which are pretty much little people in monkey suits, like just like those old gorilla costumes.
Yeah, and they got these weird cone-shaped heads.
Yeah. There's something in their kind of weird, cheap, shoddy put-togetherness. They're really cool looking. I have to admit, like, I know it's not like a design, it's kind of almost like a robot monster, like that you've got the fuzzy outfits. But they're filmed so well in this. They take these creatures and they put them against giant sets to make them look tiny. Because I guess they're like supposed to be like 3 apples tall, you know, basic Smurf size, or although their size changes a little bit as depending on what they need to do. And but they are like totally creepy, and they only will come out when it's dark, hence the title of the movie.
The effects make them creepy. Sometimes the old, outdated effects make things look creepy in these old creature feature films. Not all the time, but sometimes because they're so primitive looking, not to say that they're horrible. I've seen worse design things, and, I'm a practical effects nut, so I'll take B-movie stuff over what they've got now any day. But because they look
unusual,
bad, and it's like seeing the old Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, the old Buddy Epson Tin Man makeup. It's done so badly that if you were to see this guy standing at in your doorway, he would frighten you. It's frightening because it's so shoddy. It's so just put together so fast. It just does not look quite right. And I think that's what it is with these creatures. They don't move correctly. Like they could move a little better. They could look a little better, but because they're so just slightly off, I think it somehow adds to the effect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see that. I see that. I think there is a level of acceptance, and there was a remake, as you said, and the creatures in the remake, to be honest, can't even remember what they looked like. I remember not being thrilled with them.
I remember being bored. I honestly do. It was just that time of remakes that
I can kind of get into, when we finish up, I'll kind of get into a tiny bit about why I think this works much better than the remake. Mm-hmm. The filming of these creatures, I think, is what makes this work. There's several scenes, as I go through this, I'm going to kind of skip over a whole bunch of stuff because a lot of the movie is just these creatures tormenting her. So there's a scene with her in the bathroom taking a shower, which, even television movies had to have their shower scene.
Exactly.
In it. They actually take a coat hanger and shut off the light with a coat hanger. And again, they have little people dress up. Felix Silva, who played Tweaky in Buck Rogers, is one of the people in the costumes. Oh, wow. And so, it's amazing that that's how they thought to do it. And so in the bathroom, they have giant soap dish or like oversized bathroom cabinets that these people who, probably under 4 feet tall, made to look under a foot tall,
right?
Or at least a foot tall.
Yeah, which is cool.
Right. And it works. And I watching it today, even for a TV movie, it holds up really well.
It's inventive, like just how they did everything. You can see it. You know how they did it now, but it's still fun to watch.
Yeah, kind of like Peter Jackson in the early Lord of the Rings movies. Maybe not The Hobbit, but when he was doing a lot of the forced perspective effects that have been around since the invention of cinema,
right?
And still kind of work.
Totally.
In so many ways.
In the old giant monster movies, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
They're so much fun.
So through all this, her husband is not believing her, and actually being really aggressive. And I don't know if as a kid I noticed what a jerk the husband was. And I'm going to spend so much time talking about how much he is just a jerk for not, because, human nature would be if Mark, if you came to me and said, all right, Dean, I can't do the podcast tonight. There are little creatures that are attacking me and I'm not going to be able to make it. I'd be like,
those are your kids.
Or okay, Mark, if you don't want to do the podcast, we'll spend another month waiting to do this podcast.
Yeah, it's that condescending, patronizing tone, right?
Of course, you're not going to believe the person who's telling you that they're being attacked by little creatures.
Right.
But he's kind of mean about it. That is kind of your insanity is ruining my chances for a promotion.
Well, that's the thing. Even though he doesn't believe in the little creatures, he comes up with it's your nerves, it's your sanity. He diagnoses her with other things, but does not show concern for those things. So, okay, let's say she is delusional. And you don't believe in creatures, just hypothetically, she's not seeing monsters. Clearly she would be disturbed then. And either way, you would probably want to pay more attention to that.
Right. Even the doctor who comes in is asking the best friend, is she imaginative? Because I think
the fancy, the nice way.
Yeah. The doctor, his whole thing is she's a little creative.
Is the doctor William Sylvester, the guy with the glasses? I know William Sylvester is in this movie, and I caught it in the credits, but I missed him, and then it went back and saw some photo stills, and he's in it.
So we get to the dinner party, and the creatures torment her under the table. I don't know how everyone else doesn't notice that the creatures are under the table. But
well, are they doing this to try to make you, the audience, wonder if she is in fact delusional and it's all in her mind?
I'd say no, because we see them.
And is it after the caretaker or whatever tells the story about what happened to her grandfather, or is this still before?
No, it's still before, because he tells that story
that's later.
In the movie, because it kind of like, we get those little pieces that her grandfather opened up the thing himself, and then disappeared himself, and so you get the idea that, and then the grandmother had the caretaker seal up. That's why it was sealed up, because and it had been sealed up before then. But he actually reveals that to the husband, who then has kind of like a last minute like, oh, maybe I should have believed her. But right now the husband is still kind of being a jerk, because she has. So I think the creature's like pull the napkin out of her lap. Yeah. And that's what causes her to freak out. And you see the hand reach up, and we've seen them, and we know that they're even plotting to tie a rope around the steps and trip someone on the steps. We don't know who it's going to be yet. We assume that it's going to be Uncle Charlie, but in fact, there is an interior decorator who's been working on the house, and they kill the interior decorator.
And they get her by accident. I mean, it was a trap meant for somebody else, and they got it's almost comical. Like these demons are kind of comical. The way they're moving around, pulling napkins. There's a childlike menace to it. That's fun to watch.
I do think that they are actually playing with her, making everybody not believe her. Right. Like they're almost torturing her.
Yeah.
Like
they're smart. I mean, they figured out the coat hanger
thing.
Yeah.
No, they're and they even like pop a key through, which made me like, if I ever get locked out of somewhere, I figured out how to get the key out, because they pop it through the hole and then slide it under the door.
I hope that hasn't happened often.
It hasn't.
Okay, good. I'd be worried.
But I know that little creatures will help me get out.
I would.
So,
Dean, you're quite imaginative.
I have diagnosed him with imagination. So they keep being like, you got to settle down. You've been worked too much. And so then the husband's going to go away for his business trip. And then the creatures like take it up full notch. That's when they kill the interior decorator. Yeah. And so let's jump ahead to...
And they're kind of done playing around.
Right. Yeah. They want her. Like, and they say it outright. They scratch at her. And even Uncle Charlie, who's... The character is... I keep forgetting the kid, Mr. Harris. He will always be Uncle Charlie to me. And he is actually in the basement trying to fix something. And the creatures are like, you told, you told her not to let her out. Like they get on him, and he's like, no, I promised. I swore I wouldn't tell. So you get the feeling that he's actually dealt with these creatures.
Right. He knows more.
He knows more than he's letting on, that he actually like has dealt with the creatures, which how they got the creatures back in the thing to begin with. Maybe once they got the grandfather, they like went in and just kind of let themselves in.
Were they like just satisfied, satiated for a while?
Yeah, and like, that's when they sealed them back in.
Right.
So I'm going to skip up to the end, because this is what makes the movie so good.
Okay.
So the husband is just about to get home. The friend is there, and the doctor has prescribed some sleeping pills. And which has kind of almost given me a fear of sleeping pills. This movie has too. This movie has caused me a lot of anxiety and trauma. The friend ends up leaving the sleeping pills by the nightstand, and the creatures slip the sleeping pills into her drink. And she drinks the drink and passes out. Now, the creatures cut the lights too.
Right.
That's why the friend goes outside.
They
cut the power. The husband gets home too, because he's now found out, and he gets locked out. The creatures lock both of them out, and they're rushing to get in. And so now it's in the dark, and the creatures tie up Kim Darby and start to drag her away, which is
it's
really
chilling.
creepy.
It is a creepy, chilling scene, and again, the way it's shot is just so cool.
Yeah,
you
no,
know?
it is. It is really like
It's really intense.
yeah.
Again, made for television in a time when horror was not celebrated like it is now. Some bold choices made in this film.
Yeah,
you
no,
know?
and the end is bold. Like it is. I think considering this is a TV movie, you know, like so. You have her being dragged away by these creatures. Again, like really cool how they shot it too, because they don't have little creatures actually dragging her. You know, it's shot in 2 angles and making it seem like these creatures are actually pulling her.
Yeah.
She has a flashlight. She's flashing it at them and scares them away, and then they come back. And then I forget how they get the flashlight away from her. I think either she drops it or like they get the. I think she just she's
during
so
the scuffle.
Yeah,
shuffle,
I think
scuffle,
she's just like still a little bit out of it, but she manages to grab a Polaroid camera, or not a Polaroid camera, a camera. I'm getting mixed up with Gremlins that I saw in the theaters a couple nights ago, in which other
kind of a precursor to them, right?
Other creatures that are also afraid of bright light. Getting held off by a Polaroid camera. So it's the same thing. She flashes, they run away. She flashes, they run away.
Yep.
Now, for those of us who are old enough to remember, you only had 4 flashes on most of those cameras.
That's true.
So,
and if you're old enough, you'll remember Rear Window with Jimmy Stewart. This is how he had to ward off Raymond Burr from attacking him with 4 flashes from his bulb before Wendell Corey, the cop, could come in and save the day.
That's funny.
Anyway,
I totally forgot that.
So photography is a great line of self-defense. Is what
always keep a camera and an old-fashioned flash with you,
because you never know when Raymond Burr is going to break into your home.
So these creatures are dragging her away, and they shows them dragging her into the fireplace, into this open hole. The husband and the friend make it inside, and she's nowhere to be seen. And that's it. But then we get a post scene, like just a capper to the thing. It's of the house.
Yep.
And you hear the creature's voices again, that same opening shot, like they'll come. But then added to it, you now have her voice saying, you know, we can wait.
Yeah.
What's really kind of odd about it, though, is it's still her voice, whereas all the creatures have their creature voice.
Well, she hasn't been in there enough.
And that's kind of like, you know, although it is, again, just a TV movie, the creative mind sits there cycling going like, okay, so now how long does it take for her to become one of those creatures?
Yep.
Like what is now the process that like you're pulled down into the dark? And I think that's what fascinated me as a kid so much.
It stays with you.
This down ending, the hero doesn't survive. Like when you're watching TV as a kid, you expect the hero to get rescued, you know, or the person in distress to actually someone to make it there at the last minute and the monsters to get vanquished.
Yep.
But in this case, the dark, you know, outdid the light. Like, and so it's really cool. And I think that's kind of why it stayed with me, that kind of not twist ending, but dark ending.
Well, I mean, the bleak ending, you know, we had said it. This is late 60s, early 70s. You know, the horror moved out of the castles and the moors and into all American homes. Psycho has come out. Night of the Living Dead has come out. I mean, this is all, you know, these are the classic all American Norman Rockwell people are experiencing horror. Not only that, but there are no happy endings in any of those films. You know,
right?
Like,
and in
Janet Leigh dies. The lead in Night of the Living Dead dies, and in this, and even the movie we're going to talk about after doesn't even have a happy ending.
And we and kind of we'll jump into this a little bit more as we move now into Kolchak, but it's also we're coming out of the Nixon years too, and this kind of bleaker distrust in authority and in family norms as this one would put. You have a childless couple in this home.
Yeah.
In which the guy is like all about his job, and the woman's not 100% comfortable with just settling down and not living up to her. So it's also his not believing her and not listening to his wife.
Yeah.
That kills her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that kind of like, the fact that she's not empowered makes her the victim.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of, and I think that also, in a broad way, kind of like, how Sesame Street made Snuffleupagus not invisible anymore because kids need to know that they can be believed.
Yeah.
And this is like the dark side of Snuffleupagus. It is like no one believed her that there was Snuffleupagus
and look
living
what
in
happened.
her. Yeah. And that's what this is. And I think that his kind of awfulness is kind of purposeful in this.
Yeah.
That it gives you that like, if they had only listened to her and not brushed off her like intuition as, or even like what she was actually seeing, not just intuition, and so we'll get kind of talk about that a little bit more as we get into Kolchak, because Kolchak,
that also deals with disbelief
and also the powers that be. Not, and it was really today watching Kolchak that I kind of realized how, I don't want to use political, but how political is probably in the most broad sense.
I would
probably
say so.
The best way to put it. How much Kolchak has that, the Night Stalker. Has that in it. And when you realize who's writing the screenplay, Richard Matheson is no dummy. And Richard Matheson has written some great commentary on society.
Yeah.
Twilight Zone, a lot of the social commentary in the Twilight Zone comes out of the pen of Richard Matheson. So is a lot there in Kolchak. So I'll hand Kolchak over to you.
Very quickly, though, just one last thing.
Yeah.
I do think that going back to the husband not believing Ken Darby, if this story was told from the husband's point of view, like if the husband was the main protagonist or whatever, and he loses his wife, but it focuses more on him not believing as opposed to her trying to make him believe, you would have more of an EC Comics classic comeuppance kind of story.
Right.
Like he gets his just dessert. So it's very interesting that you bring up that angle too, because they probably were doing that on purpose. Like you said earlier, it was intentional.
So, all right.
Agreed.
So on to Kolchak.
Let's get a snack first real quick, huh?
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
All right, beautiful. On to our next feature. So this is Kolchak the Night Stalker from 1972. Kolchak is a character created by Jeff Rice, based on his novel, which was at the time unpublished, but now known as the Kolchak Papers, a.k.a. the Kolchak Tapes. The movie is directed by John Llewellyn, I'm going to say that right, Moxie, written by Richard Matheson, starring David McGavin, Simon Oakland, Carol Lindley, Claude Atkins, and Elijah Cook. So, very quickly, I'm a huge Kolchak fans. We've talked about it on Three Kiki Dads a few years ago now, I think. This show, now we'll go to young Mark very quickly. Younger Mark was a big X-Files fan. Loved the X-Files, still does. It's one of his favorite shows. So he had access to the Sci-Fi Channel in its heyday when it was super good and super new, and they were showing all older programming and old cult sci-fi shows. And one of these shows that I happened to stumble upon was Kolchak the Night Stalker. Didn't know anything about it, watched a couple of episodes, and I realized, holy crap, this is the X-Files. I mean, it really is, and it has been called the father of the X-Files, and rightfully so, because this show, talk about being ahead of its time, and talk about a show gaining so much popularity with just one season. I mean, the possibilities were endless where they could have gone. I know there were creative differences. Darren McGavin didn't get along with Dan Curtis, or Dan Curtis. Like, there was a bunch of creative differences.
I don't think anybody got along with Dan
Nobody
Curtis.
got along. No.
So Dan Curtis...
Simon Oakland and Darren McGavin got along. And you can see it in their performance as Kolchak and Vincenzo as editor. This show, I think, not only holds up, but still has the power to fascinate. I turned it, a couple of my friends who were over last month, who were big X-Files fans, got me talking about this, and I got them to watch it. And I got a message from them a few days later saying, we binge watched the whole thing. It's incredible. And I said, yeah, it really is. For its time, it's a very impressive, well thought out series, and it all stems from this movie.
And they the tie-in to the X-Files, and it's not technically a tie-in, but they brought Darren McGavin onto Millennium.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of X-Files, I don't know if it directly spun off, but...
Well, they brought him onto the X-Files first.
So
they brought him on as the original... He didn't start the X-Files, but he was the first to stumble upon it.
I couldn't remember whether they had actually...
And then they brought him from Millennium. They brought Darren McGavin for 2 episodes of the X-Files. And, you know, if you're a fan of both, this is as close as you're ever going to get to a Kolchak Fox Mulder crossover. And if you look at it that way, it's just fun to watch. Those both very good episodes. Unfortunately, they wanted to do a third one, but Darren McGavin was really sick at the time, so they had to get M. Emmett Walsh to play another Arthur Dale, his brother, who also happened to be Arthur Dale in a different episode. But the tie-ins between the two shows are terrific. Chris Carter has credited this series, many times. And I highly recommend it.
And it's Darren McGavin. You know, for those of us who grew up with A Christmas Story, which makes this our Christmas episode.
Right.
For those who grew up with A Christmas Story, Darren McGavin is like the dad's dad. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, there is something so endearing and engaging about him, and at the same time prickly and uncomfortable. He just 100%, you know, kind of in the same way that Columbo, you know, has that rough around the edges but sweet grandfather in Princess Bride. Like, that you have this lovable guy that is also a prickly curmudgeon.
He is.
And realizing, you know, in Night Stalker, he's probably several years younger than we are now, you know, and realizing like, oh, he was younger then. We'll just never accept him as like a young man, because he just gives that character life. Like
he makes that show.
Yeah,
without a doubt. Because they never really had time to explore any other characters, so of course he's going to make that show. You have him, you have Simon Oakland as Vincenzo. Their back and forth is great, but other than that, you got a monster, and occasionally you got some of the people at the INS news station, but that's really about it.
Yeah, and it really is him, and that's why, and I don't know if you're going to want to talk about the remake at all, but that's why doing a remake is a tough call for this show,
right?
Because it is really about him. Like, it is that actor in that part, in the same way it would be hard to remake Columbo.
So should I get into the
go
synopsis?
right into it.
All right, so here we go. So this is the movie where it all started. So this is before INS, before even Kolchak is Kolchak. Like, he is and he isn't in this, which is very interesting. This is horror meets film noir. This is Humphrey Bogart, film noir detective, you know, meets Hammer in a sense, and it's cool, I think. So you have Kolchak sitting in a sleazy motel room listening to an earlier recording of his notes, on tape. The recording retells notes about a series of murders that have plagued the Las Vegas Strip, and a cover-up of those killings by the local authorities. Right off the bat, this is the first time I've ever seen, and the only time I have ever seen Kolchak out of the blue suit, without the hat, lounging around in an apartment, which I thought was his apartment, but it's actually a motel room. You know, this is usually on the show, he's always at INS, or he's in a sewer tracking a monster. Those are really the only two locations. So that was really cool to see. All of the victims have had their bodies drained of blood. Kolchak attends a meeting of the police, the sheriff's department, doctors, the FBI, the DA. They're all there. And they suspect the killings to reveal a stranger named Janos Skorzeny, which I love because I'm a huge fan of the show Werewolf. Speaking of another one-season show ahead of its time. And the villain in that was named Janos Skorzeny. So I thought that was cool.
Oh.
Yeah. Fun fact, Dean. Fun fact. It is also suggested that Skorzeny is pretending to be a vampire or believes himself to be a vampire. So what also makes this different from the show is Kolchak's not really a believer in much yet. He's still kind of the gumshoe reporter.
It is weird because they're not believing, like he's not trying to convince them that the guy is a vampire.
No, not yet. No.
He's trying to convince them that the guy thinks he's a vampire.
Right.
Which is still like pretty believable. It's Vegas. I think half the people in Vegas believe they're vampires.
No, that's true.
So it is kind of odd that they are so like, nope, not a person who believes they're a vampire,
Nope.
nor a vampire.
No. These authorities do not want any of this to get abstract in any way. It's by the book, and any wild notion or outside the box thinking is automatically dismissed.
Yeah, they went to the Jaws school of mayoralness.
It was there was even a doctor, right?
Yeah.
You know, it was a boating accident.
Yeah, the doctor in this is played by Larry Linville from MASH.
That's who it is. Thank you. And God, is he a prick in this?
Yeah, and this was, I think, 2 years before MASH.
All right. That makes sense. I knew him from somewhere.
Yeah, it's right before MASH.
So another murder takes place after the whole meeting in the old uprise. Kolchak leaves, and he's off to do his own thing. Another murder takes place. A young woman is attacked by Skorzeny while getting in her car. She's got a dog that tries to attack him, but to no avail. We then cut to Kolchak's girlfriend, Gail Foster. Now, this is interesting because, again, comparing Kolchak to this and Kolchak from the series, Kolchak in the series never appeared interested in women or men. Like, he was completely just solely on his mission of getting a story. He never shows attraction. I can't remember an episode when he shows attraction to anybody. You know, even in like when he's investigating creatures that end up in a brothel, he doesn't look at the women. He doesn't make any comments. In this, he's got a girlfriend. He's got kind of a flirtatious attitude. This character, I think, was meant to go in a different direction.
It's an interesting take, especially for a TV movie. Mm-hmm. Again, made for TV.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a family movie. It's on at 8:30 at night. Mm-hmm. But his girlfriend's a prostitute.
Yeah.
And
a lady of the night.
Right. And it's funny because her friend gets mistaken for a prostitute in the beginning and kind of like shrugs off the guy. So we're kind of introduced into that world.
Yeah.
It is Vegas. And the fact that it is, that's the relationship they have gives an interesting take on who Kolchak is.
Mm-hmm.
That it is... he's kind of this old-fashioned curmudgeon-y guy, but has kind of more open-minded,
exactly.
a very open-minded lifestyle.
Well, he's lying on a slumped back in a chair. He's got a drink, which also you never see on the show. You never see him relaxing with a glass of whiskey. He's got his shirt off in this. It looks like they just did it. Or he's got that on mind. I mean, this is a total just 180 from the character I was used to seeing on the show, because I had seen the show as a kid before seeing the movie. So it was even then I could pick up the differences on that. And this was a big one. Like, wow, he spends time with girls. He drinks. he presumably he has relations.
He's not one of us.
I've never seen him out of that suit. Here he is, half naked, rocking that McGavin bod. Like,
he's very tan in this.
He's in L.A. He's Las Vegas. He's got the sun, wherever the hell he is.
Las Vegas is not L.A.
No, I know that. No, but he was in L.A. He was going, wasn't he? Just L.A. had something
he got,
to do with it.
Yeah, he did.
He did have L.A. He did move.
He got kicked out of L.A.
That's what it was, right? And then he went over to Las Vegas,
Yes.
and then he wants to go to New York, which is his dream. He wants to take Gail. He wants to take his girlfriend, marry her, and go to New York. And this is his ticket. And we'll get to that in a minute. So Kolchak's girlfriend, Gail Foster, a casino change girl, as they call her, urges him to explore actual vampire lore. So she's actually planting the notion in his head that, it might be the real thing. For the first time, Kolchak is going to think outside the box, outside the normal realm of possibilities. Up until this point, the only thing Kolchak knows about vampires is that they were, as he puts it, fancy suits and talk with marbles. They wear fancy suits and talk with marbles. I love that line.
And he does reference Bela Lugosi.
He does.
Like vampires, because it always drives me crazy in movies and stuff where they pretend that no one has ever heard of these things and movies don't exist.
Yeah.
That, what is this thing that's drinking blood that, turns into a bat at night? I've never heard of such a thing. I'd better go to the library to research woodcuts to find out what this is.
Yeah, and it doesn't fly well in the 70s because you have TVs and you've had movies for a long time. Yeah. Vampires exist. I think we talked about this in either Count Yorga or
maybe
Blackula,
we did.
But we brought this up before, but you're right. It is annoying when when you think no one's ever friggin' left their house and like saw a movie or picked up a book. Anyway, so Kolchak reads the lore and reviews the tropes about the vampires, about the crosses and, attacking them while they're in their coffins, all the usual stuff. And it's at this point where he realizes, oh, crap, well, Skorzini's an actual vampire. So now he has to go and face a press conference, which is set to go over the recent murders as well as review the history of Skorzini. You find out he's spent a lot of time roaming the earth. He's operated under various jobs and aliases. He's been around feeding for a very long time. So Kolchak urges the authorities to treat Skorzini like a real vampire and their means to stop him. But of course he's shot down because, God forbid, they don't want to believe it. And then look what happens. That's the theme for tonight. Our message, believe anything anyone tells you. I
want to believe.
I want to believe. Kolchak launches his own investigation using his own brand of informants. One of them is Mickey, played by Elijah Cook, who we talked about.
Yeah, that's right. So Elijah Cook, I don't think we named him, but Elijah Cook is a character actor from like the 50s on.
Oh, totally. House on Haunted Hill was a big one for me. At least that's what I know him best
House
for.
on Haunted Hill. Like I was saying to Jen, what did we just see him in? House on Haunted Hill. He was in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
Salem's Lot.
Salem's
I
Lot.
keep going back to that movie. Someday we're going to have to talk about it because I'm...
Yeah, it's funny. I looked up Elijah Cook because I was trying to remember because I was convinced he was in a Clint Eastwood movie, but I had been thinking of Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Discovered like all of his 70s sitcom and like everything from Batman to The Love Boat to Murder, She Wrote.
Oh, he's done it all.
Oh,
yeah, totally.
He was in everything. Like, and if you don't know his name, look it up. Because you know his face.
Yeah, like, you've seen him in anything. You have seen him at one point. He's one of those actors. You've probably seen a bunch of his work.
Yeah. He is one of the most recognizable little character actors.
He is.
Especially like as it went into the 70s, into the 80s, as he got older, I think he was on a lot of stuff as like that kind of strange little old man and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, again, Weasel Phillips in Salem's Lot, I don't think he ever left that look. The scraggly hair, he's hunched over. He speaks very like mousy like. He's all timid and and I think it's just how he went out in his career playing that same kind of character.
Yeah.
So after he meets his informant, Kolchak overhears a call on his police scanner that Skorzini has been sighted and meets up with the cops just as they apprehend Skorzini. Kolchak takes photos of the following raid. Scorsese is attempting to rob a hospital. The police are called in to stop him. Scorsese shot multiple times. It doesn't stop him, and he manages to get custody. So once more, Kolchak feuds with the authorities. It's very repetitive. It's like something happens, go back to the cops. Please believe me. No. Something happens, go to the cops. Please believe me.
Like
no.
you guys saw this guy get shot and jump over a wall.
Yeah, what is it? Wash, rinse, dry, whatever. It's just one big cycle. So he feuds with the authorities on what happened and who Scorsese is. He also insists that the police carry wooden stakes and crosses, as well as exclusive. And he says, "I want the exclusive rights to this story. Here's the deal. I'm going to help you solve this, guys. Okay, I've got steak. I made steaks. I got a friend." I got a guy, a steak carving guy. I got some steaks. Yeah. I got crosses. I'm going to tell you how to do it. Find him in the daylight, and all I ask in return is exclusive rights to this story, because this is my meal ticket out. I'm getting out of Las Vegas. I'm going to take my girl. We're going to New York. That's all he wants to do. So reluctantly, the band of assholes led by Claude Akins and what's his name again from MASH?
Claude Akins from Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
That's right. And many a Twilight Zone episodes, including one of my favorites, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. Claude Akins, what a butt, said Crow in Mystery Science Theater once. Anyway, the police reluctantly agree, but still say that Scorsese will be taken alive and put on trial, and that if Kolchak is wrong, he's to leave town immediately. So at this point, Kolchak's like, whatever, just get him. You deal with him. So while returning to his car, Kolchak is met by his informant, Mickey, who claims he knows where the house is that Scorsese is using as a safe house. Kolchak heads to the house and starts investigating, where he finds a drawer of wigs and fake mustaches and, just all the things that Scorsese's been using over time to be a different person.
Which you kind of wonder why he made the choice now to go around as a guy who looks exactly like a vampire.
I wonder.
He's got a terrible
maybe
cut.
He's a vampire who wants to be a vampire. Speaking of X-Files, there's an X-Files episode where what's his name from Sandlot is an actual vampire, but not the traditional one. So he goes around pretending to be the traditional vampire.
Yeah,
he's
a tall, lanky guy with a super
cape.
weird bowl cut. Like that.
Well, he kind of reminded me of Barnabas Collins. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but he reminded me of that a little bit. I don't know. You watched the show more than I did.
I actually did not watch Dark.
I thought you did.
I've seen the movies.
Oh, okay.
And I've seen a few episodes, but I can't claim to have watched many episodes of the show.
Well, then can't argue with me.
But Dan Curtis, who did Dark Shadows, did this too, and I think there was some. Some of the feel, because even like the staking is very like much out of Dark Shadows too.
Yeah,
many other vampire things too, but just his whole like attitude with the stakes. It's almost like they use the same stake. And
maybe they
wooden
did.
Hammer.
So Kolchak also, while exploring the house, discovers that one of the missing girls that the vampire has been feeding off of. And at that moment, he's attacked by Scorsese, and he struggles to escape. He's nearly killed when one
it's kind of a cool fight. I'm sorry
it is.
Oh,
no,
really
you can
cool
interrupt.
Fight.
Fine. No, dude, chime in, please.
Yeah, no, it's a great... It's a great fight, like because it's reminiscent of a lot of other vampire movies, but it has like all.
It's got an energy.
Like,
it's got a Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee jump around energy.
Yeah, no, it's got the whole thing. And then
it's a hammer fight.
Yeah. I guess
totally.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I like it because it is definitely a hammer fight.
It is. There's hammer in this. There's a lot of even the way he looks, like you said. He's got the vampire look of Dark Shadows, and that had to stem from Hammer.
Yeah,
for sure, right? So just as Kolchak is about to, get killed, an FBI agent named Bertie Jenks shows up, and
his best friend,
his best friend, which I didn't mention him in the beginning, but he was part of that crew and is kind of the only one. Sort of not really in his corner. So
this movie is, even though we kind of skipped over a lot of like the little details of who a lot of these characters are, is a little confusing in who all the subsidiary characters
Right.
around him. There's
Right.
a lot of like it's not like Jaws that has one guy saying like, "Oh, we can't open the beach." This has, the chief of police, the assistant chief, like
there's the sheriff.
All right,
There's
so the
a sheriff.
that's
There's a
Claude Aiken.
police. There's the DA, the doctor, the professor, and Marianne. I mean, they're all there.
There is like
It's a
literally
committee.
like 6 people. It is a committee,
Yeah.
and it is very. Again, we talked about like the politics of it.
Yeah.
It is, like you said, it's a committee. It is not just one person. It's Vegas. They want tourism, in the same way Amity, is that Jaws? That they want the people to come to the beach.
Exactly.
This place wants people to come spend their Vegas money, and nobody wants people to know that there's anything creepy happening in Vegas.
Well, especially vampires.
Yeah.
I mean, they would cover up not simple, but they would cover up your everyday, ordinary serial killer, let alone a freaking vampire.
Serial killer. So it does, but it has a whole host of characters, and understanding how his friend, who is a CIA agent.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
He's an FBI agent. Yeah.
FBI agent.
And he's on the fence because he has a duty to serve as part of this committee, but he does like Kolchak. He's one of Kolchak's friends, of which this guy does not have many.
Right.
So.
And you get Kolchak, a man of many acquaintances and few close friends. Like that he has a lot of contacts, and people generally trust him because I think they know he's a straight shooter.
Right.
But at the same time, he's also Kolchak.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, he's I don't know, he's not belligerent, but he's blunt. He'll walk into a room. The way he talks, the way he moves. He's very. What's the word I'm looking for? Help me here.
Abrasive.
Thank you. Yeah, let's go with
because
that.
Because there's a scene where he comes upon the corpse of a young woman and comments on how voluptuous she is. And that oh, that's that's kind of awkward. You probably should keep that one to yourself, not to say that to the cops.
That's early Kolchak. Less sex jokes in the show, but still, even upon seeing corpses, always had a line about I've seen more dead bodies than you've had TV dinners, things like that.
Yeah.
He's patronizing. He does not like authority at all. He's a rebel, and if he doesn't like you, he's gonna treat you like a fool, and he's gonna talk down to you, which is amazing because this is a guy running around half the time talking about monsters, but because he knows for a fact they're out there, they exist, and they're gonna start some shit. He knows this, and the fact that no one else believes them, it almost seems to give him a perverse sense of superiority.
So there's another point. I'm forgetting what the mayor, one of the officials says to him during the press conference, and kind of it says something like, "Can you dig it?" To him, as if he is. The counterculture, like that. And it really does kind of get to the meat of it.
Right.
That we are the establishment and you are not.
Yeah.
In that. And even, I'll let you go on because once he does get, once they kind of screw him over.
Yeah.
The way they reference even his girlfriend.
Oh, it's awful. We'll get to it because this ending had me heartbroken.
Yeah, I won't keep you on it.
No. It's cool. I know what you mean. He's not part of the elite, and people let him know it all the time, and it just seems to feed him further in his investigations. So Jenks does show up, and Kolchak and Jenks force. They manage to overpower Skorzeny. They force him out into the light. The sun's coming up, and he's destroyed. Basically, it's traditional.
It's
classic. It's a classic camera ending.
Or Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing pulling down the curtains.
Yeah.
And revealing the light on. Christopher Lee.
It's great. You can't beat the classic way of destroying a vampire.
Yeah. It's always. And so then the police come in.
Yeah, just too little, too late. So they only have Kolchak and Jinx, and Jinx isn't going to say anything.
Right, and unlike Christopher Lee in Hammer in Horror of Dracula, he doesn't dissolve. Like, we still see him there. Yeah. So it is kind of like, oh, we're here with a corpse.
Yeah, you guys killed. Like, you just killed the guy. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
He did not get due process. Did you read him his Miranda rights before you murdered him?
Well, they have the leverage now for what's coming up.
Right.
And it's sad, unfortunately. So Kolchak writes his story and convinces his girlfriend to come with him to New York. He's happy. He thinks he has it made. They're going to write the story. The police came in. They saw the body. They know a vampire is there. This, he naively thinks. They're going to go to New York and they're going to get married. However, he is called over to, the committee, we'll just say that, the authority, where they arrest him for murder. They are unwilling to print his story or admit that Scorzini was a vampire. They're gonna print a false version of his story, and threaten to charge him with first-degree murder unless he leaves town and never returns. That's his only option. You stay here, I'm going to arrest you for murder one, says Claude Aitkins, and everybody's got his back, and even Bernie Jenks gets silent. He tries. And even before he goes into the committee, he sees Vincenzo.
So this can I point out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Jen was like, "Will you quote me on this? Because this scene is amazing." Like when Vincenzo is talking to him and says, I forget what the compliment is.
You're a hell of a reporter.
You're a hell of a reporter,
right?
And Jen's
it's the only time he's ever nice to him.
Yeah, and that line, he's like, Vincenzo's smart enough to know what's going to go down. And that is kind of the small crumb that gets thrown to him that I'm sorry. And it is the hurt and the that this is the way the world goes. This is how it works. This is a Chinatown ending.
Exactly. This is a Chinatown, which is one of my favorite endings. One of my favorite non-horror films, actually, if you could call it that. But it's true. You're right.
Yeah. Jen was the one who pointed. She's like, this line right here sums it all up.
She's absolutely right.
It is there.
And we kind of glossed over Vincenzo in this because he's not in it as much as he is in the series.
The TV series, he's
right.
It's the relationship between the two of them is really delightful.
Exactly. Because they are allies, but it's a very bumpy relationship.
Olsen, it is really like Perry White and Jimmy Olsen.
It's old school trying to play it straight. It's Kolchak coming at him with vampires, werewolves, and he's got a paper to run.
Yeah.
But here, because Kolchak the series hasn't happened at this time, he's kind of just his editor.
Yeah, he's kind of the straight up Mr. Grant.
Exactly.
Like that kind of
yeah, right. That's a good one. I like that.
But through the whole time, he's been kind of poo-pooing all of what Kolchak is coming up with.
Right.
Like that, he isn't in it as much, but he still has that kind of, the person who is aware of how much politics are going to have to play into the newspaper game.
Yep. And that carries on over into the show.
Right. And it is, it can't go without saying that this is all coming a year, 2 years after the Watergate break-in, and a lot of the manipulation of the newspapers by Nixon, like a lot of the dirty games that were going on at that point. And, it's... Yeah, I'll use history as the example there. Like there's lots of movies about newspaper men,
absolutely,
and how they have to buck the system to be able to get their story out. And this really uses those same. I don't want to use tropes because it sounds like a negative, but the same pieces to tell a story, but instead of instead of breaking into the Watergate Hotel, you've got a vampire.
Yeah.
Like in that. And
absolutely. And think about being an editor and trying to hold a prestigious newspaper and having to answer to people when you are, walking on eggshells for, the everyday conspiracies. And then you've got one of your reporters constantly hammering you with supernatural tales. Like, how do you work that into a paper?
And then that one...
But he can never completely dismiss them because there are dead bodies. There's news that has to be reported. But, he's got to be careful how he words it. Kolchak's trying to save people. It's such a good show.
And that whole, you're a hell of a reporter is kind of like the admission of, I know you're telling the truth, but I'm not going to be able to run it. We have to run this other piece that is made up for him. So
and Kolchak has no idea because he hasn't gone to the committee yet. So he kind of gets an inkling of something's in the air, but he doesn't know what.
Yeah, I mean, he's on cloud nine. Like he thinks he's bucked. He's because he's an arrogant guy. Like he kind of.
Well, he thinks he beat them.
Right.
He's like, I told you, you saw the vampire, but again, the powers that be have just too much power. So they do print a false version of his story, and they threaten to charge him with first-degree murder unless he leaves town. And to add insult to injury, they even send his girlfriend out of Las Vegas. They force her out. They dub her an undesirable.
That's
element.
what I was referencing earlier.
Yeah,
that it's like And by default, he is too.
Yeah,
like that kind of.
Yeah,
it's just that is
and the smiles on their faces, they know they've got him. So we come full circle to the scene where he's back in the motel room. He's listening to the last bit of notation from his recording. And we, the audience, hear that all the evidence has been destroyed. All witnesses have left town. Kolchak is going to move on. He's going to find another place, and he's going to use every resources he has to find his girlfriend. Now, that never really gets brought up again. Really, I don't know if it's brought. I can't remember the Night Strangler if it is, but for the TV show, that quest is all but gone. But in the remake, they kind of go back to Kolchak losing a loved one.
Right.
But instead of conspiracy, it's an unseen monster that kills her. So they kind of try to update it.
Or it was... It could have been,
or
an
it could have been, but it was a mysterious death.
I think that they were hinting that it wasn't an unseen monster; that it might have been a conspiracy.
Oh, okay.
Like, so
all
I
right.
think there is.
It's been a long time.
Yeah,
But the way they filmed it was a horrific kind of scene.
To be honest, I got the series at the dollar store.
Did you?
Yeah.
But again, I get what they were trying to go for. They were trying to launch off the original, maybe omit what had happened in the series, and instead just use the movies as a stepping stone. Who knows?
Now, little quick things to wrap this up.
Yeah.
That, we talked about Richard Matheson, and Richard Matheson, outside of the Twilight Zone, also wrote one of the great vampire books of all time, I Am Legend.
Well, one of my favorite books.
It's they're called vampires in the book, but it actually spawned the whole like zombie mythology that we know now, because basically the vampires in it, hung out outside his door, and that's kind of where Night of the Living Dead got its ideas.
I mean, George Romero has said, I ripped it off.
Right,
like, flat out ripped it off.
So Richard Matheson had his hands in vampires before this, and then we talked about Dan Curtis, who, as you said, did House of Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
Barnabas Collins being his famous vampire, who was also in the movie House of Dark Shadows and several remakes. It's been done quite a bit since then. But Dan Curtis also did his own version of Dracula too.
That's right. Yep.
So he's dabbled in the vampire thing a few times.
He's a vampire fan.
So
and helped carry them on.
Jack Palance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Brian, you are a Kolchak fan. Do you have anything before we wrap up? Anything you want to chime in about?
Listening to you guys talk, I really want to see the movie now.
Well, you should.
Yeah, because I mean, I've seen every episode.
Right.
Like you had mentioned earlier, MeTV is no longer available in our area. And after Svengoolie at midnight, they would show Kolchak the Night Stalker.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
And I would watch it after Svengoolie, and I loved every episode.
Yeah.
All, 13 of them maybe, if that?
No, there were a couple. There were more than 30.
Was there?
Were there only 13?
I don't think there was that many.
I don't know.
Less than
Jesus,
20.
Really?
It is affordable on DVD.
It is. Actually, the Blu-ray Special Edition collection, for all you collectors out there, like myself, is out.
Oh, I didn't know
awesome.
they had updated it.
Oh, it is great.
Own
they got the commentaries for all. There's a commentary done by, film historians for all episodes.
Oh, really? Because the commentary, admittedly, the commentary for this movie is amazing.
Yeah.
It is a deep dive. It is like you literally have to sit there with it is not just people being like, oh, and this is great. Like he was on.
No, they go into the characters and the detail.
They go into the politics.
Yep.
They go into literary references in it. They are really so. If you don't own either the Blu-ray or the DVD, I recommend everyone get that. Listen to the commentary track because it is smart.
Yeah,
like
and get the series too. I know there have been episodes. For those who've never seen the show, episodes are available. I think there's like a sci-fi app they can go to. There's, they're on YouTube. You can find them. But I highly recommend. I recommend the movie. I recommend the show. I basically just recommend the character. This is just a great character, and I feel like
just not the remake.
No. Well, I might just see the remake. You might dig it.
Remake.
Knowing after seeing the movie, and listening to some of those commentaries that talk about the remake, you kind of want to see it again with more of an open mind.
I think that one problem that the remake has is that it got canceled early, so all of the stuff that it was setting up in its mystery never got any type of resolution at all.
Never played out.
No, but now with all these streaming shows and streaming series, a relaunch that. I would be for a relaunch if they looked back at this material, looked really close at what made a show like this great, and took those, especially since we're now on it and have been for a while now, a huge nostalgia kick for old school 80s, the old school 70s style grindhouse.
Netflix is bringing back the Munsters. They're bringing back Wednesday Addams.
Yeah.
Why not Kolchak?
Yeah.
Kolchak might go back too far. Not that the Munsters isn't older than Kolchak, but that might, for today's audience, that might not have had exposure to.
Maybe,
to
but
Kolchak.
there's always those people that love the monster of the week, and
because essentially they've done. I mean, Supernatural.
Yeah,
is really
totally
like
agreed.
And there have been a few others that have really used this, monster of the week thing. It really did. Was there something before this that had? This might have been. I
don't think so. I don't think there was. If there was, I'm not aware of it. I'd have to think about it.
So let's very quickly. This was the ABC movie of the week.
Yep.
Some of the other famous ABC movies of the week were Kung Fu, the pilot. They launched several pilots, including the $6 Million Man, Starsky and Hutch, and the Wonder Woman, the Kathy Lee Crosby. Pilot of Wonder Woman was also an ABC movie.
Oh,
I remember that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a little different. Her costume is nowhere near.
No, I'll have to check that
out. It's like a jogging suit.
Yeah,
I got to see that. That's great.
Kathy Lee Crosby, who was on.
That's incredible.
That's incredible.
That sounds like a '70s Captain America thing happening.
Yeah, absolutely was.
Some of the movies were Satan's School for Girls was another one of the horror movies that came out of it. Killdozer.
Oh my God, Killdozer! Holy
Killdozer.
crap.
We did say Duel, which was
Richard
also
Matheson and
Spielberg. And those are the ones that I wrote down. But of the one we just did.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think we covered a lot of ground tonight. This was a great episode. And thank you again for joining me to talk more horror. And thank you guys who are listening for listening. So until next time, do you want to say it or should I?
What do we say?
Good night out there, whatever.
Is that
what we're going with. I was doing it all, Three Geeky Dads, for Halloween, but I missed saying it, so I figured we could just keep it.
It's a good sign.
Thank you, Brian. So
you can do it.
We'll do it. Okay. So until next time, for me and Dean. And Brian, as always, thank you very much for putting this together and keeping us on track. Good night out there, whatever you are.
Sweet.
Cool.
I'm like, what, we have a sign up? What's
We
that
do.
sign up?
We do. Too long in between episodes, man. So yeah, give us a little intro, sir.
All right.
All right.
Let me know when you're ready.
We're ready. I'm ready. Are you ready? Actually.
Yeah,
we're ready.
All right.
we're all ready.
Let's wait for the helicopter
Yeah,
to go by.
Oh, Dean, they found you.
It's the second one that flew really low over the house today.
What's going
Wonder what they're
on?
looking for. I don't know.